Alright, so this is a review on solving rational equations. And so number one, we have this rational equation. And so one of the things that makes it rational is, first of all, notice you have a fraction. In particular, though, for this particular review, notice that in the denominators you have variables. And so you have a variable expression here and you have a variable expression there. So we have this rational equation. Now, to solve a rational equation, remember the steps. So the first thing we need to do to solve a rational equation is to factor all denominators. And so if I look at what I have here, these are monomial factors. So this is a monomial, this is a monomial, and 7, I can think of 7 as 7 divided by 1, which is also, and so 1 is also a monomial. So in terms of this step here, there's nothing I can factor. They're monomial factors. So in number two, the next thing I want to do is I want to multiply both sides of the equation by the least common multiple of all the denominators, and the purpose of that is to eliminate the fractions. So let's go ahead and find the least common denominator. And so the least common denominator of y and 2y is 2y. Now I should have said y, 2y, and 1. Remember, the denominator here is 1. So that's the least common denominator. Always use the least common denominator. Using the least common denominator will make things so much easier for you. For example, you could have used, in this case, 2y squared. But 2y squared is a common denominator, and that would make things so much more difficult for you. Alright, so always use the least common denominator. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to, still in step number 2, we're going to multiply both sides of the equation by the least common denominator. And so one of the things you can think of is this. So if you look at the left side, there are two fractions, two terms on the left side. You have 4 divided by y, and you have 1 divided by 2y. And on the right side, you only have one rational expression, one term. And we're going to multiply both sides by the least common denominator. Remember, what you do to one side, you do to the other. So basically, you have something that looks like this. You have 2y times the left side, 4 divided by y minus 1 divided by 2y equals, and then 7 times 2y. So I'll multiply both sides by the least common denominator. Notice that I put the left side in parentheses because there's more than one term. And all of these terms has to be multiplied by the least common denominator. So I'm using a distributive property now. So I get 2y times 4 divided by y minus 2y times 1 divided by 2y equals, and then this right here is going to, I'm just go ahead and rewrite this as 14y. 7 times 2y is 14y. So remember, the whole purpose of multiplying by the least common denominator is to eliminate the fraction. So you want this, instead of being a y, you want this to be a 1. Instead of the denominator here being a 2y, you want that to be a factor of 1. Alright, now notice also that we multiply both sides by the least common denominator. In particular, keep in mind, at some point you're going to see that each of these terms, all of these terms, are going to be multiplied by 2y, and that's what you see here. So 4 divided by y times 2y, 1 divided by 2y times 2y, and then 7 times 2y, which is 14y. Okay, so let's go ahead and reduce. So y divided by itself is 1, y divided by itself is 1. Alright, over here, the two y's divide out, so you see you get factors of 1s. So that's the whole point of multiplying both sides by the least common denominator. And now what you have, when you simplify each term, you have 2 times 1 times 4, which is 8, minus, and then 1 times 1, which is 1, equals, and then 14y. So 8 minus 1 is 7, so I get 7 equals 14y. And then dividing to get y by itself, notice I have a linear equation, and we all know how to solve a linear equation. So I'm going to divide both sides by 14. And when I do that, I get 14 divided by 14 is 1. 1 times y is y, equal, and then 7/14 reduced is 1/2. All right, so this is my solution, and for right now I'm going to call this a proposed solution because one of the other things you have to do is in step 5 is to verify that your solutions is or are not restricted. So let's remind ourselves what that means. So so one of the first things you also want to do besides finding the least common denominator is finding any restrictions to the variable. So what is it that, in this case it's y, the variable is y, so what is it that y cannot equal? So remember, when we're dealing with fractions, so you may recall that any number divided by 0 is undefined. All right, so when you have a rational expression, you don't want 0 to be in the denominator because that makes the expression undefined. So what we got to go do here is look at this, and we got to do all denominators that involve the variable terms. So we're going to look at this denominator. So what value of y is going to make this 0? Well, that's easy. Y is 0, right? So y cannot equal 0 because when y is 0, I get 4 divided by 0, which is undefined. And the same thing here. See, this is 2 times y. So 2 times what number is 0? Well, 2 times 0, because 1 divided by 0 is undefined. And over here, I don't have any variable expressions to the denominator, so I don't have to worry about this side. So the only restriction is 0. So you got to ask yourself, is this proposed solution a restriction? And the answer is no. So if I did all this work correct, then this is my solution. So I would say the solution is y equal 1/2. All right. Now you can always check your work, and I'm not going to have time to check the solutions for all of these because of the time. But basically, remember, you have to go back to the original equation to check your solutions. All right, because you could have made a mistake anywhere along the way. So always go back to the original. So here's the original: 4 divided by y minus 1 divided by 2y equal 7. So in place of y, I'm going to substitute 1/2. So I get 4 divided by 1/2 minus 1 divided by 2 times 1/2. And I want to see if that's going to equal 7. Well, 4 divided by 1/2 is 8. So that's 8. Minus, and then let's go ahead and simplify the denominator here. 2 times 1/2 is 1. So this right here becomes 8 minus 1. And 8 minus 1 is 7. And that's what I wanted. Okay? So that's number 1. Let's look at number 2. In number 2, I have this rational equation. So here's number 2. I have this rational equation. And notice, though, that in this particular case, I don't have monomial factors like I did in number 1. So my denominators were monomial factors. Here, that's not the case. All right, so we are going to have to actually factor the denominators. Now, in the first denominator, x minus 5, I cannot factor. All right. Over here, though, see this x squared minus 9x plus 20? I can factor this. So in last semester, you took a course where a whole chapter was spent on factoring, and then subsequent chapters involved factoring as well. So we have x minus 4 times x minus 5, and that's going to give us this right here. Notice that when you try to factor these denominators, always see if for instance, see this right here, when I factor, the factors are listed here as well. So see if these factors are going to be the factors for this trinomial. And always check yourself. X times x is x squared. The outer and the inner gives us negative 9x, and negative 4 times negative 5 is 20. All right, so I factored the denominators, and so now we're going to find the restrictions. So let's find the restrictions first, and then we'll look at the LCD. So what is it that x cannot equal? So you got to ask yourself, what makes this denominator 0? So in other words, let me go ahead and write it on this one. In other words, you're asking yourself, where is x minus 5 equal to 0? That's your question. Well, x minus 5 is equal to 0 when x is 5, right? So when x is 5, 5 minus 5 is 0, so that makes this undefined. So x cannot equal 5. Then we go to the next factor, which is x minus 4. And again, the same process. Where is x minus 4 equal to 0? Well, x minus 4 is equal to 0 and x equals 4. So when x is 4, that makes this rational expression undefined because 4 minus 4 is 0. And then over here, 4 minus 5 is a negative 1. But 0 times any number is still 0. So you get 3 divided by 0, which is undefined. And the same thing here. That's 0 as well. So, my restriction at this point is 5 and 4. Over here, I forgot this one as well. So x minus 5 is my next factor, but I've already taken care of that. And then over here, my next factor is x minus 4, but I've already taken care of that as well. So those are the only two restrictions. Now the next thing you want to do is find the least common denominator. And so the least common denominator has to include every factor you see. So I'm going to need x minus 4, x minus 5, I'm going to need x minus 4. So x minus 5, x minus 4, so it's a product of all those. And then x minus 5, I already have it, x minus 4, I already have it right here. So that's my least common denominator, and leave it in factored form. Leave this in factored form, because you're going to, when you multiply, in step number 2, when you multiply both sides of the equation by the least common denominator to limit the fractions, you're going to be eliminating factors. So leave it in factored form. Okay, so the next step is to multiply both sides by the least common denominator. So here's my least common denominator. So I'm saying x minus 5 times x minus 4 times the left-hand side, which is negative 6 divided by x minus 5 minus 3 divided by, now when rewriting this, use the factored part here. So write it as x minus 4 times x minus 5. And notice again, I'm using a grouping symbol because I have two fractions on this side. And both of those have to be multiplied by the LCD. So when you distribute, you'll notice that this is being multiplied by the LCD and this is being multiplied by the LCD. I don't need it here because that's only one fraction, so I'm just going to write this as negative 5 divided by x minus 4 times x minus 5 times x minus 4. So again, notice I multiply both sides by the least common denominator. Now when I distribute, I'm going to write this as x minus 5 times x minus 4 times the first fraction, negative 6 divided by x minus 5, minus, and then the LCD, which is x minus 5 times x minus 4 times 3 divided by x minus 4 times x minus 5 equal, and at this point I'm going to go ahead and reduce this. So the x minus 4's divide out. Remember, the whole point of multiplying both sides by the LCD is to get these factors, to get these denominators to be factors of 1s. And so I have that here. I'm going to have that here as well. Okay, now be careful. On this side, you have a negative 5 times x minus 5 times 1. So that's negative 5 times x minus 5. All right, so be careful. You got to make sure you put your parentheses in the right place. Now let's go ahead and reduce here. So the x minus 5's divide out. You get factors of 1s. So you see you got that 1 in the denominator. This is your 1. But you're left with a negative 6 times x minus 4. So negative 6 times x minus 4. Minus, and notice here, all of these divide out. And so you get just a negative, and then 1 times 3 is just 3. See how that looks? So this right here is just 3. Equal, I'm just going to leave it as negative 5 times x minus 5. All right, so that's where I'm at. Okay, so notice I ended up with an equation without any fractions. So now I have this nice linear equation, which is going to be easy to solve. So distributing here, I get negative 6x, a negative 6 times a negative 4 is a positive 24, minus 3, equal, and then this is a negative 5x distributing here, plus 25. Combining like terms here, I get negative 6x plus 21 equal negative 5x plus 25. Alright, so remember, you want to bring all the variable terms to one side, all the constants to the other when solving a linear equation. So I'm going to add 5x to both sides. When I do that, add 5x to both sides. When I do that, negative 5x, negative 6x plus 5x is a negative x plus 21 equal, this is 0, and you get 25. Subtracting 21 from both sides, I get negative x equals 4. Now be careful, don't say your solution is not 4 because this is a negative x, a negative 1x. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 1. And so negative 1 divided by negative 1 is 1. 1 times x is x, so x equals a negative 4. So that's my proposed solution. That's your proposed solution. Now the question is this proposed solution the solution to the original rational equation? And so one of the things you want to look at is the restrictions. Is negative 4 one of those restrictions? And the answer is no. So if I did all of this work correct, which I did, then this proposed solution, I'm using the word proposed, that's my word, my proposed solution is the actual solution. So my solution is x equal negative 4. Okay? And again, you can go back to the original and check to see if that does work. And we could do that. I'm not going to have time to do it on all the three other problems because I want to do 5 altogether. But let's just check this one. So let's just check to see if x equal negative 4 is correct. Because I could have made a mistake. I did not because I worked this ahead. Uh, but I could have made a mistake along the way. So always go back and check when you have time. On a test, I'll be honest with you, on a test, you're not going to have time to do that. All right, so always go back to the original equation. So here's my original. And my original was this equation. It was negative 6 divided by x minus 5 minus 3 divided by, and I'm going to go ahead and leave this in factored form. So x minus 4 times x minus 5. Now just make sure though you factored it correctly, because if it's just not factored correctly, then obviously you're going to have an error. Equal negative 5 divided by x minus 4. So that was the original. So in place of x, I'm substitute negative 4. So I get negative 6 divided by negative 4, and a negative 5 is a negative 9, right? Minus 3 divided by negative 4, and a negative 4 is a negative 8. A negative 4 and a negative 5 is a negative 9. Equal, I want to see that's going to equal negative 5 divided by negative 4, and a negative 4 is a negative 8. Well, this right here becomes positive 6/9, or if you want to, you can reduce this. So that's what, 3 halves? Minus 3 divided by, and then 8 times 9, 72. And I could reduce this further, but I'm going to leave it like this for right now. And I want to see if that's going to equal, a positive 5/8. Now use your calculator. You have access to a calculator. So I'm going to say, I'm trying to get rid of the glare here. So I'm going to say 3 divided by 2 minus 3 divided by 72. 3 divided by 72. All right, so you get this. So remember, you got to learn how to use your calculator to convert this to a fraction. So I'm going to go second PRB equal. So you see you have fraction to decimal, decimal to fraction. And so I get 1 and 11/24. So this right here is 1 and 11/24. Okay? And so this here is 5/8. So I made a mistake somewhere. Let's see where that mistake is. Let's see. Negative. Mistake is here. So that's not 3 halves. 6/9 is 2/3. Excuse me. So 2/3. And I knew I made a mistake because those are not going to be equal. All right, so let's redo this. So 2/3 minus 3 divided by 72 equal, all right, convert that to a fraction. Notice what happens. I get 5/8. So that's 5/8, and that's what this is. All right, so that is number 2. All right, let's look at number 3. So it's not a difficult process. All right, in number 3, we have this rational equation. Again, we're going to have to factor this denominator. These I cannot factor any further. Now remember we talked about earlier. See, to factor this, see if the factors of these include any of these. So when you factor this, you'll notice that the factors of this trinomial is actually these two factors. So when you factor this, you're going to get y plus 4 times y minus 1. And when you FOIL it out, you'll notice you get this trinomial. So my restrictions, so remember, always determine your restrictions. You will be asked to do that. So y cannot equal, so what makes this denominator 0? So this denominator 0 when this factor is 0. So you're asking yourself, where is y plus 4 equal to 0? That's what you're asking. Well, y plus 4 is equal to 0 and y equals negative 4 because negative 4 plus 4 is 0. And so that makes this denominator 0. So y cannot equal negative 4. Let's go to the next factor, y minus 1. What makes y minus 1 equal to 0? Well, y minus 1 is equal to 0 when y equal 1 because 1 minus 1 is 0. So that makes this denominator 0. And in fact, when you go here, well, let's go back. We'll come back to this later. So this is 1. Now let's go to the next factor, y plus 4. Well, already taken care of that, right? So this fraction is undefined when y is negative 4. This fraction is undefined when the denominator is 0, and the denominator is 0 when y is 1. All right, so those are your two only restrictions. Now let's find the LCD. So the LCD has to include every factor you see, and those are not difficult. Just list your factors. Y plus 4, y minus 1, y plus 4 already have it, y minus 1 already have it. List it once. If you list it more than once, it's no longer a least, it's a common. And then that would make things so much more difficult for you. So there's your least. Now once you do that, remember the next step, we're going to multiply both sides by the least common denominator. And so basically when you multiply both sides by the least common denominator, every fraction you see is going to be multiplied by the least common denominator. So in other words, you're going to say y plus 4 times y minus 1 times this fraction, y minus 14 divided by, and I'm going to go ahead and write this in factored form, y plus 4 times y minus 1 equal, and then the LCD times this fraction, y plus 4 times y minus 1 times 2 divided by y plus 4, plus, and then the LCD times this fraction, y plus 4, y minus 1 times 7 divided by y minus 1. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and reduce. So remember, the whole point of multiplying both sides by the LCD is to get these fractions to be factors of 1. So these divide out, and so you get 1 times y minus 14 is y minus 14 equal. Over here, these divide out, so you get 2 times y minus 1 plus, and then over here, the y minus 1's divide out, so you get 7 times y plus 4. All right, and so notice you have this nice linear equation, so we're going to go ahead and distribute. And so I get y minus 14 equal 2y minus 2. And over here, I get distribute the 7, I get 7y plus 28. Combining like terms, I get y minus 14 equal 2y and 7y is 9y. A negative 2 plus 28 is a positive 26. Now we have this linear equation, so I'm bring all variables one side, all constants the other. I'm going to go ahead and bring the y term to the right-hand side. So I'm going to subtract y from both sides. And so y minus y is 0, so I get negative 14 equal 9y minus y is 8y plus 26. Subtracting 26 from both sides, I get negative 14 and a negative 26 is a negative 40 equal 8y. This is 0. And divide both sides by 8, I get y to be negative 5. All right, so negative 4 divided by 8 is a negative 5. Now, so that's my proposed solution, right? That's your proposed solution. That's your proposed solution. So you got to make sure, though, that your proposed solution is not a restriction, and it's not. So if I did all this work correct, and I did, if I did all this work correct, then this proposed solution is a solution. So my solution is y equal negative 5. Okay? All right, so that was number 3. Let's look at number 4. So in number 4, I have this equation. All right. So notice this is the difference of two squares, and so we know that we can factor this as x minus 2 times x plus 2. And again, notice that these are the factors of this binomial. And so let's find the restrictions. So what makes the denominator 0? So what makes this denominator 0? Well, that denominator is 0 when this factor is 0. So x minus 2 is 0 when x is 2. So I know that x cannot equal 2. Over here, this denominator is 0. Right here, this denominator is 0 when this factor is 0. So x plus 2 is equal to 0 when x is negative 2, because negative 2 plus 2 is 0. Over here, I've already taken care of this, right, because that was listed here. And over here, I've already taken care of that because that was listed here. So x plus 2 is 0 when x is negative 2. X minus 2 is 0 when x equals 2. So those are your restrictions. So now let's find the least common denominator. So the least common denominator has to include every factor you see. So it'll be x minus 2, x plus 2, right? Okay, so now we're going to multiply both sides by the least common denominator. So every fraction is going to be multiplied by the least common denominator. And remember, the whole purpose of multiplying by the least common denominator is to get these factors in the denominators to be ones. So you want to clear your fractions. So on this side I have 2, so I'm going to multiply this by the LCD and this by the LCD, and over here I only see one fraction. I'm going to multiply that by the LCD. So I get x minus 2 times x plus 2, that's a plus right here, times 3x minus 4 minus 6 divided by x minus 2 times x plus 2, minus, and then the LCD, x minus 2x plus 2 times 3 divided by x plus 2 equal, I'm running out of room, equal, and then that's going to be the LCD, x minus 2 x plus 2 times 9 divided by x minus 2. Okay, now let's go ahead and reduce. So these two factors in the denominator reduces with these two. So I get 1 times 3x minus 6 is 3x minus 6 equal, subtract. And then the x plus 2's divide out here, so I get 3 times x minus 2 and equal. Over here, the x minus 2's divide out, so I get 9 times x plus 2, right? Okay, so that's where I'm at. Now let's go ahead and distribute here and distribute here. So get rid of the parentheses. I get 3x minus 6, and then over here I get minus 3x, what's that, plus 6, right? Equal, and over here that's 9x plus 18. All right. Notice on this side, 3x minus 3x is 0, and negative 6 plus 6 is 0. So on this side, this just ends up being 0, correct? And over here, I get 9x plus 18. So I want to solve for x. I have this linear equation, so I subtract 18 from both sides. And so I get negative 18 equals 9x. Divide both sides by 9. And negative 18 divided by 9 is a negative 2, equal, and then 9 divided by 9 is 1. 1 times x is x. So here's my proposed solution. That's your proposed solution. Okay? Now, you want to check to see if this proposed solution is a restriction, and it is. So this is the only proposed solution I had. It happens to be a restriction, which means that this proposed solution makes this equation not a true statement. So therefore, you're going to say your solution. So in the blank, there's going to be a solution in the blank, and you're going to write no solution. Okay, so there's no solution. So this equation has no solution because this is a restriction. So you have this restriction. Okay? All right. All right, so that's number 4. Then let's look at number 5. So the last one, number 5. Okay, so again, I have a difference of two squares here, and the factors of this is these as well. So I get some of the factors is x minus 3, x plus 3. So your restrictions, what can't x be? Well, this denominator is 0, this factor is 0 when x is 3. That's easy to see. Over here, this is 0 when x is negative 3, right? Negative 3 plus 3 is 0. And 6 divided by 0 is undefined. Over here, this factor I've already taken care of. X minus 3 is already listed right here. I've already taken care of that. Over here, this factor is this one as well, so I've already taken care of that. So there are your restrictions, and so your LCD will be each of those factors. So it'll be x minus 3 times x plus 3. Don't list them twice because it's no longer a least. It's going to be a common, and you're going to make things a lot more difficult for yourself. Okay, so we're going to multiply each of those fractions by the LCD. So I'm going to go ahead though, I'm going to write that first step here, which is actually multiplying both sides. So, because that's what you're supposed to do. That's technically what you're doing. You're multiplying both sides by the least common denominator. You're going to then distribute, which you'll see each of these fractions be multiplied by the LCD. So, reality, you have this. You have x minus 3, that's a 3, times x plus 3, times the left side, which is 4 divided by x minus 3, plus 6 divided by x plus 3, equal, and over here, you have 10x minus 6, and then again, write this in factored form, x minus 3, x plus 3, times the LCD. Okay? Distributing here, so you get x minus 3, x plus 3, times 4 divided by x minus 3, plus, and then x minus 3, x plus 3, times 6 divided by x plus 3, equal, and I'm going to go ahead in this point and just reduce this now, so that'll be 10x minus 6. Okay, now, reducing these x minus 3's divide out, so you get 4 times x plus 3. Over here, the x plus 3's divide out, so you get 6 times x minus 3, equal 10x minus 6. Now, when I distribute here, I get 4x plus 12 equal, and then plus 6x minus 18, right? Equal 10x minus 6. 4x and 6x combining like terms, that's 10x. 12 and a negative 18 is a negative 6. Equal 10x minus 6. Now I want you to notice something. These two sides are identical, aren't they? So your inclination is to get x by itself, get the x term by itself, all right? But notice what happens. When I subtract 10x from both sides, now again, we notice that those two sides are identical. That expression's the same as this expression. So when you bring the variable terms to one side, they are eliminated. So you get 0 and a negative 6 and negative 6, and then 0, negative 6, and negative 6. So you no longer have any variables. So you may say, well, what do I do? Well, you're on the right track. You just got to remember, since the variable disappeared, and that statement is true, negative 6 is equal to negative 6, what that means in terms of this rational equation, what that means is that your solution is any real number except the restrictions. Any real number except x equal 3 and negative 3. So that's how you write it. So your solutions will be any real number except x equal 3 and negative 3. Now another way you can write something like this, just in case you see this, another way you can write this is that your solutions would be the set of all real numbers such that, this right here means such that x does not equal 3, negative 3. All right, but most students will write it like this for right now. All right, so that's what that means. Now you can't use 3 and negative 3, right? Because that makes these expressions undefined. But what this means is that if you substitute any number for x, for example, if I substitute x equal 2, right? So x equal 2 is not a restriction, so I'm saying it's all real numbers. So x equal 2 should be a solution. So watch, you're going to see that's true. So I get 4 divided by x minus 3 plus 6 divided by x plus 3 equal 10x minus 6 divided by x minus 3, x plus 3, right? So let's substitute 2 in there, and you'll see. 4 divided by 2 minus 3 is a negative 1, right? Plus 6 divided by 2 plus 3 is 5. I want to see if that's going to equal 10 times 2 minus 6 divided by 2 minus 3 is a negative 1, and then 2 plus 3 is 5. Okay, over here, use your calculator to help you. So I have negative 4. So watch, negative 4 plus 6/5, right? Plus 6 divided by 5 equal. So I'm going to leave this, since that's a terminating decimal, I'm going to leave it as a terminating decimal. So that's negative 2.8. Equal over here, I get 20 minus 6, which is 14. So the numerator is 14. Divided by negative 5 times negative 1 rather times 5 is a negative 5, so divided by negative 5 equal negative 2.8. See that? So x equals is the solution. And you can continue on that. You could use decimals, you could use fractions. Remember, those are real numbers. Um, so if you want to say, well, let's try x equal negative 3.2, right? So let's try that, negative 3.2. So let's try decimal. So when I do that, now you have to be careful there because you are using decimals. So you have 4 divided by negative 3.2, and a negative 3 is a negative 6.2, plus 6 divided by negative 3.2 plus 3 is a negative 0.2. And we see that's going to equal, over here, you get 10 times negative 3.2 minus 6 divided by negative 6.2 times a negative 0.2. Negative 3.2 and a negative 3 is a negative 6.2. So these factors should be the same as these. Okay, so let's check this. So 4 divided by negative 6.2, 4 divided by negative 6.2 plus 6 divided by negative 0.2 equal, now that doesn't terminate, so let's write this as a fraction. And so I get negative 30 and 20 divided by 31. So that's my next mixed number. So negative 30 and 20 divided by 31. Over here, now be careful. Hopefully I didn't make a mistake when I substitute negative 3.2. Over here, though, let's use the calculator for the numerator. So 10 times negative 3.2 minus 6 equal, so my numerator is negative 38. Okay? The denominator, negative 6.2 times negative 0.2 is 1.24. So negative 38 divided by 1.24 equal, and then convert that back to a mixed number, and I get negative. So this right here is negative 30 and 20 divided by 31, which is what this is. Okay. All right. So that was a quick review on solving rational equations. Now I want you to notice though that in all these problems, we ended up, just to remind you, we ended up with a linear equation. So in every single problem, we went from a rational equation to a linear equation. All right. So that in this particular review, that's what we had, a rational equation, and we ended up with a linear equation. Okay. All right. So that is solving rational equations.